Hello everyone and welcome to the EVN Disrupt podcast. My name is Abgaryan. I'm the editor of the creative tech section here at EVN Report. This week we are continuing our series of podcasts from the Science and Technology Convergence Conference. We were happy to be the media partner of the STC conference, which was organized by SmartGate's Catalyst Foundation, with the support of the European Union and the GIZ Foundation. Our guest this week is Lucy Abgaryan. Lucy is a scientist and biotech executive currently based in Southern California. Her company, GrittGene Therapeutics, is working on finding a cure for myotonic dystrophy. We spoke about Lucy's journey as a scientist and executive, and what it takes to build a company that is focused on finding a cure for a specific disease. Lucy also shared with us her experience in working with institutions in Armenia. Thank you for listening. Lucy Jan, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Nishdejan, for giving an opportunity to talk about biotech and biotech in Armenia particularly.
Yeah, thank you. Let's start with a little bit of your background. You have a long career as a scientist. You've worked at different prestigious institutions, and now you also have a business background. You've done your MBA. Tell us a little bit about what got you interested in merging these two fields. Why did you want to move from academia into bringing science to the market?
Sure. I always like to start talking about my education and background from my school. The high school that I went is Fizmat in Armenia, in Yerevan. I was born and raised in Yerevan. And I think that's very important part of my life school, and also education, academic school, right? Then I went to physics department. And when I went to physics department, I didn't go because I wanted to become a scientist, but I wanted to continue having fun with my friends. And most of them were going to physics department.
Yeah.
But eventually I gained interest in science, and particularly science that has something to do with living. Uh-huh. And the closest to it was in physics department, molecular physics, molecular biophysics department. So I went there, I did my master's there and PhD. During my PhD, I had a chance to move to San Diego and did part of it at Scripps Research Institute, which is pretty well respected, doing great, amazing research, applied bioscience, nationwide, worldwide. I was very lucky to end up in a group that I ended up, and we have had amazing projects. One of them is already an FDA-approved drug. It had an FDA approval in 2020. It was the spin-off happened in 2008, the company called Receptos. Mm-hmm. After a couple of years still being in preclinical phase 1, it got acquired by Celgene for $7.3 billion.
Wow.
When you see these numbers and your science, you start thinking how the business, the backstage thing happening, right? And then my two other projects eventually became another spin-off, Blackthorn Therapeutics, which was located in Bay Area because that's what investors wanted, and usually you please investors. Mm-hmm. And those are for neurodegenerative disorders, two completely different targets. Currently, they are in phase 1 and phase 2 in clinical trials. And seeing all of these processes, and then Celgene, with my first project, got also acquired by Bristol Myers for over $70-something billion. So during all of this period, the business aspect of the things were kind of interesting for me. And then I decided, you know what, I need some basic education and knowledge on this. So I decided to go to UCSD, which has amazing business school, particularly aimed for people who already have some professional background, but they want either to pursue entrepreneurial career or move to C-suite. And I did my MBA in entrepreneurship, innovation, and corporate governance. Mm-hmm. And the program was amazing. It gave an opportunity to directly from the MBA program start working with startup companies. Mm-hmm. And the connection that I have made was with Israel being the startup nation, and a little bit of me trying to understand how we can learn from there and how we can apply things in connection to Armenia, because we have a lot of similarities. Smaller nation, being in geopolitically awful positioning, and also having a huge potential with diaspora.
Right.
I was thinking that there is a lot that I can learn from there. So I have worked with over 32 startup companies based in Israel, moving to US market, or just being in Israel by themselves. And during this period of time, I helped to establish one startup company in connection to defense with optical communications.
Israeli company?
No, that was a US-based company, a small contract company for defense, which started because it was a defense contractor. It had to start and finish with the project. Another company was an analytical laboratory, testing laboratory based in California. And then I started another project, which is Prune Labs, basically where I decided to bring in together all my skills, the science and business, and consult startup companies. And basically now it works as a CRO, contract research organization. And what we have here, I love modern technologies, machine learning, AI, the amount of help they bring in to expedite processes is amazing. And at Prune Labs, I'm trying to, even though we do everything, wet lab, business consulting, regulatory consulting, but I want our main focus to be helping the digital modern technologies and conservative good old science to come together and have more amplified effect in terms of discoveries and coming to market, basically. And then finally, the GrittGene Therapeutics, which is a pure pharmaceutical company. We are working with rare disorders. We are working on finding treatment for rare disorders. We have a couple different approaches. Cell therapy, personalized, is one direction. Another direction is targeting particular proteins that are involved in this with small molecules. And here we are working on collaboration, and one of the companies that we are in process of having discussions for collaboration is another Armenian startup, Biosim. We are hoping to have good findings in this collaboration and expedite the process.
So I want to dive deep into GrittGene, but before we do that, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your experience working with Israeli startups. So the Israeli ecosystem is much, much more developed than Armenia is, for sure. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of similarities, and maybe we're somewhere along the way to one day catching up in our own scale. What are some major takeaways you got from working with the Israeli ecosystem, and what are some lessons we can take and improve our own?
Well, I mean, I definitely, and when I'm criticizing us, right, I mean, this is a constructive criticism. I want us to learn on this and and apply it, right? So one of the things that I like in general in their relationship, and I think we need to take this, is how they are doing things for nation and not for government. We are a very person-oriented nation. We want to do something because this is here, this person is here, or that person is here. How about we just do it for cause and not for one or another person? I think that's number one takeaway. Everybody, doesn't matter they are in opposition, they are in a governing party, or wherever they are outside, do they share the views or not? If this is business, they are doing their business. If this is for nation, they are doing their job. And I think that's number one thing that we have to learn from them. Discipline, nobody can compare with, like, we definitely are like really behind. I mean, it has its explanation, right? All of their military services and everything. The entire nation is so disciplined. It's like behind believable norms. But saying all of this, I'm not saying that it's impossible to do here, but I think we have to take ourselves seriously. We have to respect what we are doing. We have to respect ourselves and people with whom we are doing. I think if we do that, things will be much, much better. I mean, very simple things like responding to emails. Like when you see the email, or we should make a routine thing, right? To check our emails every day and like at least in 24 hours, give a response to something. Here I'm seeing that, for example, like lacking. So I think work culture, the discipline, and also the priorities for why we are doing it, what we are doing it is very important.
Let's talk about GrittGene Therapeutics. So my understanding is that the primary focus of the company is finding treatment for myotrophic dystrophy type 2. Did I get that right?
Almost, yeah. It's myotonic dystrophy type 2. That's our number one target, yes.
Yeah. And short form is DM2.
Yes,
let's go with
correct.
that for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm curious about how the models for these businesses work when you're you're targeting a very, very specific thing, finding treatment for this one specific disease. How do you build a business around that?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest, right? This is not your classical biotech model. Very classical model would be like what we had with Receptos. You do the research in academia, then you basically come up with an idea, an IP, and then you license the IP, and then you know around what you are going.
Yeah.
And I mean, in case of Receptos, when we were targeting MS, multiple sclerosis, I mean, even in that case, eventually when you start doing commercialization, you can kind of do the market analysis and understand which one has better market, for which market you have better penetration, in which cases your reimbursement systems will work better. I mean, it's a full process.
Right. And this is usually in the form of a drug, developing a drug.
Yeah, I mean, it's
more.
I'm like talking the most common small molecule drug scenario, right? I mean, in case of GrittGene, things were a little different. Not a little, they were completely not traditional.
Right.
So we didn't have a solution, but there was a disease. Usually, not in biotech in general. When do you start a business? When there is an unmet need, when you have money and you want to do something with it, right? And or when you have a new technology.
Right.
In this case, fortunately, we had money and we had unmet need.
Right.
So technology, let's create the technology.
Right.
So that was the approach in GrittGene's case, which again, it's not the most traditional. And biotech is not digital or IT sphere, right? It's very investment heavy, resource heavy field. The investments are high, but the return is very fruitful as well. The failing rate is very high as well. So you take your risks, but you can do some risk assessment. In our case, we have some plan Bs and so on.
Yeah.
However, I mean, that's usually how it happens. In our case was like unmet need, and particularly DM2 is so overlooked, and there are diagnostic issues because people are not being properly diagnosed. So there is misunderstanding of how large the market is for DM2. So we have also like the backup plan that like phase 2, phase 3, perhaps not for trials, but like for business, that eventually when we are coming closer to the part where we can launch something, we can start doing our trials of personalized treatments. In that stage, we have planned where we will come with our machine learning technologies, promoting or helping leveraging the diagnostic field, how to use the machine learning, digital health to direct people to this diagnosis early stage, which will, from business perspective, it will expand our market.
Yeah.
But also from humanitarian perspective, people will diagnose much earlier, and then they will be able to do some preventive care, which we are basically working on providing eventually.
And along the way to finding the treatment, are there ways to generate revenue for a business like this, or is it just investing more and more capital into reaching the long-term goal?
Mostly that's the case. I think I want to see biotech moving into a space where your shareholders are the patients, because they have the most interest in it. Can you imagine when you have this ecosystem, when they are the decision makers, when they are the investors, and they are the ones who are keeping you accountable for what you are doing, instead of being it. And if you look on our website, which is very immature because we don't do marketing or anything for the website, I mean, for the company, but you will see that we are cure-driven and not business-driven. And we are very careful from whom we are taking money, even though we had offers to have investment, just because they knew the team and they know what type of work we have done previously. People want to invest early on, right? We don't want to take any money that is going to want us to
sort of be a thorn on your
change the direction, to change the priorities. When we have certain technology coming up and ready to license, we might license, branch out to keep sustainability, but so far that hasn't been an issue for us.
So before we dive even deeper, just tell us a little bit about what exactly DM2 is, how many people does it affect, and why did you decide to work on this specific disease?
Wow. Okay. It's a very complex. It's not completely clearly understood disorder. It's a very complex disorder. It has good sides. I'm talking from scientific perspective, right. The good sides and the not so good sides. It's very understudied. So that's what we do. Like we are trying to dig into it as deep as possible to understand completely the mechanism of this disorder. It's a single gene disorder. There is extension on intron of CNBP gene, CCTG repeat. For different patients, the extension has different amount. For some, it can be 100 repeats of CCTG gene. For some, it can have 11,000 repeats, which makes the targeting even more hard. So for which particular patient you are finding, you are creating modified treatment, right? However, the symptomatic of the disorder is very, very wide. Cataract can be one of the symptoms. Muscle weakness and deterioration can be one of it. Myotonia can be another. In some cases, it can affect heart and other smooth muscles. It can have effect on cognitive abilities. Deterioration of cognitive system can take place. So it is all over the place. And different people have different symptomatics. And a lot of time when they see a doctor first time, a physician first time, they are being misdiagnosed. And it takes time because they are being misdiagnosed. They are being treated for something completely different. It's not having right effect. I know patients, because we are having relationship with our patients, I know patients that it took 14 years for them to
get the right diagnosis.
Diagnosis. And there are a lot of physicians that it seems like they are not even aware of this disorder in order to diagnose. And the final correct diagnosis can be done by genetic test. And the healthcare system thinks that the genetic testing is an expensive way. So they would not send every single person to get diagnosis just because they came to see a neurologist. So when I was talking about our backup diagnostic help, this is the case when if we have enough information collected that we can use machine learning to predict that, you know what, putting all of this together, this person is a candidate for genetic test. And we can show that for healthcare system, for reimbursement system, insurances, it is more profitable or less hurtful to diagnose those category of people, send them for genetic test, spend a little bit more money to do genetic test at this stage, rather than every year try to figure out what's happening with this person. So we are thinking our reimbursement can come from there. We can also have the patients who are truly diagnosed, and the awareness will kind of spread with this as well.
And are you guys involved in the diagnostic part of the cycle? Do you guys
That's
do
what we
testing
want to do eventually, but we are not there. No.
Okay. Why did you guys decide to work on DM2 specifically?
It was like scientific challenge, I guess.
It's an interesting problem to
well,
work on.
I mean, we worked with MS, and I was at that moment, I started working with a team, actually, Armenian company, that are working on 3D printing. And someone approached us saying, what do you know about DM? And I was like, I don't know anything about DM. So I Googled about DM2 particularly. They were asking about clinical trials. I said, I don't know any clinical trials that are happening. So I looked in my network, I reached out different places, and everybody was like, no, nobody's working on DM2. There are works on DMD. There are works on DM1 because the obvious market is larger. And also the causalities are more harsh, and for those disorders people are being diagnosed from childhood very often. And I started looking and researching, and I saw a lot of similarities with MS, symptomatic wise also. However, the etiology of the disorders are completely different. And then particular person was like, if I find investments and everything, will you be willing to work on it? For about a year, I was convincing him from different ways that this is not a good idea.
Okay.
That this is there is, in best case scenario, you read that every one person in 8,000 has DM. And the probability of DM1 or DM2 is 1 to 1. So, which means 1 in every 4,000 should have DM2.
Okay.
So it's not that rare, but because of the diagnostic issues, it's like considered much more rare.
Right.
And then after a year, almost a year, 9 months or so, I think I was so much invested in this research that when he called again and he said, so what are you saying? And I kept sending him these articles, how biotech fails, what's the failing rate,
right.
and like all the negativity of like why this is not a good idea. And then he was like, okay, so are we doing this or no? So that's how I started working on it, because I mean, it's a huge ocean where you can do so much. And the fulfilling part is that because so little is done in this field, every small step is going to have a huge impact.
Got it.
Even if we don't be the one who finds the solution, that's how I think we are going to be the one who finds the solution.
Yeah.
But even if someone else finds the solution, we are going to be very happy. We are going to completely support
this problem will be solved.
Yes. Yeah. And when I was talking with a lab, so that bioinformatics team can work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are not doing basic research, for basic research, you can take data from everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's available everywhere. But for applied science, for personalized science even more, we have to have this particular person's data to be worked upon. So if you are doing it either in-house or you're outsourcing, let's say we are doing proteomics, RNA analysis, profiling, in collaboration with SUNY Albany, they definitely have bioinformatics team there. And then there is the question, why are you taking this data that we generated and sending it somewhere else and creating another contract? You are paying, I mean, from business perspective, you are paying us indirect costs. You are paying them indirect costs. You are like doubling some administrative costs. For what?
Yeah.
So from business perspective, it does not make sense at all. Well, I mean, if we can find ways to kind of, I mean, the entering the space has to be done step by step. It cannot happen overnight. All of a sudden, we cannot have this great system where we have all the core facilities, everything working together as a system. It's not going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. But we have to kind of understand how this can kind of move forward. And of course, and I hear this from my colleagues too, that we have to see what's our strong side and use it. And I think it has been done very successfully already. Like, again, the example of Biosim, that is basically US company that has team that's working here. And then there are a couple others. I don't want to say other names because I am not familiar with all of them. Right. But again, we need to do certain steps to do also the other part of the research, the wet lab. So what can be done here basically to help the scientists or the teams to get attracted? I think we have to, as in any business, let's look at it as a business. You have to have a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. If you don't have competitive advantage, you cannot penetrate the market. Yeah. And then for a competitive advantage, I have different ideas, like what can be done. One of the things is the indirect cost being very high. Can Armenia? No, in general, right? In the world, when you are going, the fees are very high. I think one of the things that can be done, if we cut the cost, any biotech, if they can cut the cost significantly entering here, they might take the risk of doing it. I think nobody has heard about Armenia in the biotech world, big biotech world. Right. Yeah, because I have tried before 2020 to kind of refocus from different places to Armenia, and they're like, they don't know. Then the first thing they Google, it seems like it's in a region that it might not be too safe. And this was even before 2020, these conversations. Now even probably people will be more scared to invest in this area. So I think what really needs to be done, Armenian-owned or Armenian participating businesses, small businesses, biotech, should penetrate just taking the risk on their own skin and come in. But for that, Armenia has to kind of help them to justify why they are doing it.
Right.
And as I said, it can be in form of indirect cost cutting, overhead cuttings. It can be like how the IP is going to be taken care of. I mean, there are different avenues that this can be done. But also, I think one of the really cool things that can happen here, which I think is very far from being happening, is Yerevan is a small city. Mm-hmm. And we can take advantage of it. There are different institutions. How about we connect all of them under one network and we call it one big institution, mm-hmm. and just each institution becomes certain core, certain facility, and they work together under one roof, whatever you want to call it.
Those parts
absolutely. And each one of them is being responsible for certain parts. So nobody repeats. The resources are very limited. But this collaborative environment can make it very efficient as a system. They can not double their resources. They will not have overlaps. But same time, they will be able to handle covering costs for bringing something new in.
Right. Right.
And by that, I don't mean only like equipments and wet lab, but also logistics.
Mm-hmm. So there needs to be some sort of umbrella organization that houses the current institutes that we have and organizations that we have to make it all work more efficiently, you think?
Yeah, I think. And I think just being Armenian, knowing how our brain works, I think it might not necessarily be any of the organizations that already exist.
There needs to be something that
is completely independent, doesn't have any particular interest in any of these institutions, so that it will be fair for everyone. I can understand, or I can see how one institute, let's say if Institute A will become the umbrella, bringing everyone else, I kind of can see how people will not feel like going under that institute's umbrella.
Right.
But if we can create something, and it doesn't have to be a resourceful thing, but if we create something that is basically overseeing everything and being the connective net, it might work out. I think this should be some type of structure that is containing people, professionals from abroad and from inside. I see great things are happening here. There is a move towards creating something. But I think it's very important to involve the reliable, really good professionals that are in Armenia. It's the key. Because business people, they have amazing skills of selling and understanding what the business needs are. But you cannot understand what the scientific needs are, what are the shortcomings, what are the hurdles, if you don't involve people who are actually doing that work.
Who do you think needs to be the ones to take the leadership, take that initiative? Is it something for the state to be doing, or should it be coming from private industry?
No, I don't think that we need to be dependent upon government, because as I have mentioned earlier, we are a type of nation that is very people-oriented. And if it becomes a state-dependent something, when depending on who is going to be the government, we are going to start doing or not doing, like how the funds closed because the system has changed, right?
Like
exactly. Like seriously, people need to get education. Young people are not going to wait for your battles. I mean, the focus, the priorities has to be different. I think that's why until we learn to differentiate the important from non-important. I mean, for each individual field, I'm not saying that government is not important. I'm just saying for biotech, our focus is biotech. I think that's one of the issues. If each one of us does what we are good at instead of doing what we everything else. I am not a political analyst. I'm not going to start analyzing this. I can have my personal judgment as an educated person. But we have the tendency to become political analyst or virologist or epidemiologist or whatever whenever the need comes.
So another thing we were speaking a lot about at STCC, the Science Technology Convergence Conference, is strategic directions. And one thing I learned in a conversation with another exec from the biotech industry is that Boston, which is really considered the global capital of the biotech industry, started investing in biotech all the way back in the 60s when it wasn't clear at all, that biotech would become this incredible mover in the world. And when thinking about strategic directions for Armenia, there are some things that are often spoken about. For instance, agriculture is a huge part of our economy. So things like agrotech are super important to boost the productivity and things like that. Why is biotech important for Armenia? Why should we really be focusing on it and investing in it in here?
Well, I mean, we have great potential for that. We have the brains. If you look globally,
right.
In my team, I have like significant amount of Armenians that are not from Armenia. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I kind of brought them together from their key roles in their institutions. Right. They were not like, oh, we don't have job, we are Armenians, can we be? No, right. Like they are the key players in their roles. So we have this national potential, intellectual potential. One, it is investment heavy, but also it's a return, as I said, is quite significant. Yeah. Significant. It can be significantly higher in certain term than even small IT company returns can be. So I think for economic impact, it can be very significant. It has for global economy, the impact of biotech is significant. So
right, so it's important in order to become a global player.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why not? I mean, because if the brains are being used outside, why not use it to create
that potential here
in Armenia.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Lucy, our last question. Where do you hope to see both GrittGene and the Armenian biotech ecosystem in the next 5 to 10 years? What are your hopes for them?
Well, I think for GrittGene, I want to have a patient who have used our cell gene therapy and had a positive result.
By the way, do you guys do clinical trials now, or are you not there yet?
No, but our technology is such, because it's a precision medicine, it's a personalized medicine. So we directly work with patients now. So what we do technology-wise, I cannot kind of open everything up, but basically in few words, we take the samples from the patients. We basically take it back to stem cell stage. We then create certain type of cell stems, and we modify the gene, and then we give it back to the patients, basically, like to say it roughly,
right? Okay.
Without opening any of the
secrets, trade secrets.
All the processes, right. I would say. So that's why it's not a clinical trial. However, we are already directly working with patient samples, and if we have it ready, and we have given it to at least one patient in 5 years.
That'd be a huge one.
Be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about for the Armenian biotech ecosystem? What's the one indicator that we should be optimizing for?
What should we be optimizing, or where do you think we will be?
What do we optimize for to get to where we need to be in 5 years?
I think taking this as a business, for having a business, we have to understand what are the needs. Right? What resources do we have for these needs to overcome? We have to have an agenda. We have to have a collaboration. We have to have a leadership. Those are like key factors that we have to have, and we have to push it forward. We have to have agenda, and we have to have people who are going to stay accountable for pushing this agenda forward.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go more in depth in technical things, but I don't think there is need for that. Yeah. But again, I'm pretty sure in 5 years we will have system. I'm very optimistic about it. However, I think if we do it in collaborative manners and we do it as a team all together, by all together, I mean diaspora and Armenia together, and most importantly, institutions within Armenia together. And I think one very important factor is that like we were talking about state, about government, right? I think they have to be just like standing there on ready mode to whenever anything needs to be changed, to change.
Right.
We don't have the luxury to say, oh, you know what, like in United States, this is how they do. In Germany, this is how. No, we are not there.
Right.
We are at the stage that we have to be we are an agile.
Yeah.
We have to be agile. We are a startup as a country.
Yeah.
We have to be agile. Everybody has to wear many different hats. and we have to be ready to do any type of modifications to bring the clients to us. In this case, client is biotech
and companies
and individuals who are considering. If they looked, it's like in marketing, right? When somebody clicked, you want them to stay there.
Right.
So what are you doing to keep them?
Right.
Just giving them horvats and kebab is not going to be.
That's a great analogy. All right, Lucy Jan, thank you so much for joining us today and enlightening us with all of your knowledge. I hope next time you're in Armenia, we'll have a chance again to sit down and continue the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.